In a busy shopping mall filled with shining lights and strangers rushing by, one tiny moment changed everything. A 5-year-old girl named Bella stood in front of a vending machine, tapping it gently and whispering, "Maybe something will fall out." Beside her stood a man in a sky blue suit, Kelvin, a millionaire CEO, who stopped to watch her innocent act. He had all the money in the world, but had forgotten what real warmth felt like, until that very moment. What began as a child's simple wish soon turned into a powerful lesson about hope, love, and the magic of kindness. Stay till the end. This story will touch your heart and remind you that even a small act of innocence can change someone's life forever. The mall was alive that afternoon, filled with laughter, music, and the soft hum of hundreds of conversations blending into one. Children held balloons, couples walked hand in hand, and the scent of fresh coffee floated from a nearby cafe. Every corner sparkled with life. But in the middle of all that brightness, one man stood apart, Kelvin Brooks, the 35-year-old millionaire CEO who seemed to have everything money could buy, yet nothing that truly mattered. His sky-blue suit shimmered under the lights, tailored perfectly to fit his tall frame, but his heart felt empty inside. He walked slowly past the glittering stores, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. People turned to glance at him. His face was known from magazines, from stories of success and power. But none of those people saw what was behind his cold, gray eyes, a loneliness that had followed him for years. He passed the toy store where children laughed over stuffed animals. A father lifted his daughter into his arms, spinning her around as she squealed with joy. Kelvin stopped and watched, a sharp ache spreading through his chest. He remembered being that small once, before life became meetings, deals, and the endless chase for perfection. His phone buzzed in his pocket, his assistant reminding him of a dinner meeting with investors. He didn't reply. For the first time, he didn't care. He just wanted a moment where something, or someone, would make him feel alive again. He walked toward the food court, not hungry, but curious. The smell of pizza and popcorn filled the air, and the chatter of children echoed like a melody he hadn't heard in years. Then something unexpected happened. From across the hall, a small sound caught his attention. Thud, thud, thud. He turned his head and saw her. A tiny girl, maybe 5 years old, standing in front of a vending machine. Her blonde hair glowed under the mall lights, tied into 2 uneven pigtails. She was hitting the machine gently with her little hands, her voice whispering something he couldn't yet hear. Kelvin frowned at first, confused. The security guard nearby seemed amused but didn't stop her. Shoppers passed by, smiling faintly at the sight, but for some reason, Kelvin couldn't look away. Something about that small girl pulled at a part of his heart he thought was long gone. He took a slow step forward, then another. As he got closer, he heard her soft voice say, "Come on, maybe something will fall out." Her words were so innocent, so full of pure hope that Kelvin stopped in his tracks. For a moment, the world around him, the lights, the music, the chatter, all faded away. All he saw was a little girl who believed in magic. He watched as she hit the glass again, this time with both hands. The machine didn't move, but her spirit didn't fade. She smiled at it like she truly believed it would listen. Kelvin's heart stirred, not with pity but with wonder. He realized he was looking at something rare, something untouched by greed, fear, or sadness. He was watching a child's faith that the world could still surprise her. A lump rose in his throat. He didn't know why, but he wanted to help her. Maybe because no one ever helped him when he needed it most. He slipped his hands into his pockets and slowly walked toward her, each step echoing softly against the polished floor. As he approached, the little girl turned her head slightly and looked up at him. Her blue eyes met his gray ones. And in that instant, something inside him cracked open. For the first time in years, Kelvin Brooks, the cold, successful, untouchable millionaire, felt his heart beat a little faster. And he didn't even know yet that this tiny girl named Bella was about to change his entire world. Kelvin stood still for a few moments, just watching her. The little girl's small hands pressed against the glass of the vending machine, her forehead almost touching it. Her pink dress had a tiny white bow on the back, and her shoes looked slightly worn out, like she had walked a lot that day. Yet there was something magical about her presence, something so pure that even the crowd seemed to fade away. He took a slow breath and finally spoke, his voice soft and careful, as if not to startle her. "Hey, little one, what are you trying to do?" The girl turned around instantly. Her blue eyes sparkled like summer skies, wide with innocence and curiosity. For a second, she just looked at him. This tall man in a sky-blue suit with perfectly combed hair and a polished watch that probably cost more than her mother's car. Then she pouted, pointing a tiny finger at the vending machine. "It took my coin, mister," she said in the sweetest voice he had ever heard. "I gave it my coin and it didn't give me my chocolate." Kelvin felt a smile tug at his lips. "Maybe it's broken." But the girl shook her head firmly. "No, maybe it's just sad." He blinked, surprised. "Sad?" She nodded, completely serious. "Maybe no one said thank you to it for a long time. Machines get lonely too, right?" Kelvin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. A strange warmth spread through his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. This little girl wasn't angry or upset. She was hopeful. She believed even a machine could be kind if treated with love. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked softly. "Bella," she replied proudly, her voice light as a melody. "It means beautiful. My mommy told me that." "That's a lovely name," Kelvin said gently. "And you really think hitting it will make it give you something?" Bella looked at the machine again, then nodded. "Maybe something will fall out if I just try again." She gave the glass a tiny punch with her small hand and whispered, "Please work, okay?" Kelvin almost chuckled, but there was something so sincere about her tone that he stopped himself. Instead, he watched her closely. Each time she hit the machine, her face lit with expectation, then fell slightly when nothing happened, but only for a second before she tried again. It was like watching pure hope wrapped inside a child's heart. "Machines don't have feelings," Kelvin said softly, kneeling down beside her. Bella turned to him with a smile that could melt the coldest soul. "Then maybe you can help it feel something," she whispered. For a moment, Kelvin forgot to breathe. Her words echoed in his mind. Maybe you can help it feel something. No one had spoken to him like that in years. Everyone around him either feared him, respected him, or wanted something from him. But this 5-year-old girl looked at him as if he were a friend, someone who could bring kindness to a sad machine. Kelvin stared at her, feeling something shift inside. The loneliness he carried, the silence he drowned in, it all faded just a little as he knelt there beside her. "What if I help you?" he asked, smiling faintly. Bella gasped, her eyes shining with excitement. "You'll help the machine feel happy again?" Kelvin nodded. "I'll try my best." She clapped her tiny hands. "Then maybe it will give us chocolate." He couldn't remember the last time he laughed, but now he did. Softly, genuinely. Her excitement was contagious. At that moment, it wasn't about the chocolate. It was about something much bigger. This little girl believed in magic, in kindness, in trying again, in never giving up on the world. And somehow, that belief was reaching straight into his heart. He didn't know it yet, but that simple moment, kneeling beside a vending machine with a 5-year-old, would be the start of the most beautiful change of his life. Kelvin stared at the vending machine for a moment, his mind unusually quiet. For years, he'd made decisions worth millions in seconds. But right now, the only decision that mattered was how to make one little girl smile. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a few shiny coins, and looked at Bella. "Let's try this together, okay?" Her blue eyes widened in excitement. "You're gonna help it feel happy?" she asked eagerly. He smiled. "Let's see what happens." He slipped the coins into the slot, the metal clicking softly. Bella pressed her tiny finger against the button showing her favorite chocolate bar. They both waited, 1 second, 2 seconds. And then clunk. The chocolate bar dropped down. Bella gasped so loudly that people nearby turned to look. Her face lit up with pure wonder, her mouth forming a perfect O. "It worked! You fixed its heart!" she squealed, clapping her hands. Kelvin laughed, not his usual polite smile for business meetings, but a real deep laugh that came from somewhere warm inside him. "Looks like you were right. Maybe it just needed a little help." Bella bent down quickly and grabbed the chocolate, her tiny hands trembling with joy. "It's my favorite. Thank you, mister. You made the machine happy again." Kelvin felt something strange, a tightness in his chest that wasn't sadness but something softer. He had seen joy before, but not this kind. Not the kind that asked for nothing in return. She looked at the chocolate for a long second, then did something that stunned him. She carefully tore the wrapper open, broke the bar in half, and held one piece out to him. "Here," she said, smiling brightly. "You helped. We share." Kelvin blinked, unsure what to say. "You want to share with me?" She nodded seriously. "Sharing makes chocolate taste better. Mommy says that." He hesitated, then took the piece from her small hand. The warmth of her fingers lingered on his palm as he brought the chocolate to his lips. It was simple, sweet, and soft, but to him it tasted like something he hadn't had in a long time. It tasted like kindness. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Bella happily munched her half, her feet swinging slightly as she stood there, completely content. Kelvin just watched her, realizing how strange this felt, and yet, how right. He had attended endless banquets with crystal glasses and gold plates, but none of those moments felt as full as this one. Sitting beside a vending machine, sharing a chocolate bar with a child he'd met only minutes ago. "You know," he said softly, "you're very special, Bella." She tilted her head. "Why?" "Because you believe in things most people forget. That even machines can feel happy, that sharing matters, and that the world can still surprise us." Bella giggled, her cheeks turning pink. "Mommy says if you smile, good things happen." Kelvin looked down at her and smiled gently. "Then you must have made a lot of good things happen today." Bella's giggle echoed like music in the hallway, and Kelvin felt his heart expand. He didn't know why this small girl had found her way into his day, but he felt as though fate had placed her there on purpose, to remind him what life truly meant. He watched her carefully fold the empty chocolate wrapper and tuck it into her pocket. "You keeping that?" he asked. "Uh-huh," she nodded proudly, "so I can remember this happy time." Kelvin's throat tightened. "That's a good idea." He wanted to say more, but before he could, Bella suddenly looked around. Her cheerful face turned worried. "Mommy," she whispered softly, her voice trembling just a little. "Where's my mommy?" Kelvin's heart sank. The mall that moments ago felt bright and full suddenly seemed too big, too loud, too crowded. He knelt down beside her again, his voice calm but his pulse quickening. "Don't worry, sweetheart. We'll find her, okay?" Bella nodded, clutching his hand tightly, her small fingers wrapped around his, and for the first time in a long time, Kelvin felt needed. Not as a CEO, not as a millionaire, but as a person. He stood up tall, scanning the crowd. The music from a nearby store played softly, the lights glowed, and people moved in all directions. But his focus was only on one thing now, keeping that little hand safe in his. He didn't know it yet, but that small piece of chocolate had done something no business deal ever could. It had woken his heart. For a few moments, the world around them felt still. The sound of laughter and chatter faded as Bella's small voice trembled in the wide hallway of the mall. "Mommy," she called softly, turning her little head from side to side. Her eyes darted between the crowd, filled with a sudden fear no child should feel. Kelvin's chest tightened. He looked around quickly, scanning faces, searching for any sign of a worried mother. But all he saw were strangers passing by, some smiling, some busy with shopping bags, none belonging to Bella. "Don't worry," he said, lowering himself so his eyes met hers. His voice was calm, though his heartbeat was racing. "We'll find her, I promise." Bella's tiny fingers clutched the sleeve of his sky-blue suit, holding on like he was the only safe thing left in the world. "She was right there," she whispered, pointing toward a clothing store across the food court. "She told me to wait, but she's not coming back." Kelvin felt a strange ache in his heart. This girl, so bright, so hopeful just minutes ago, was now trembling. He couldn't bear to see the fear in her eyes. "Okay," he said softly. "Let's look together." He took her hand gently, wrapping his large, steady fingers around her small, warm ones. Her hand felt fragile, like holding a butterfly. As they started walking, Bella kept looking up at him, trusting him completely, even though they'd met only moments ago. "Do you know what your mommy looks like?" Kelvin asked as they passed store after store. Bella nodded. "She has brown hair and wears a pink scarf," she said, her voice shaky but hopeful. "And she smells like strawberries." Kelvin smiled softly. "That's a good clue. We'll find her soon." They walked past a fountain where children tossed coins, making wishes. Bella stopped for just a moment and whispered, "Please, help me find Mommy." Then she tossed a coin from her tiny pocket into the water. Kelvin's throat tightened. He had seen business empires rise and fall, but he had never seen faith this pure. He crouched down beside her. "You know, Bella," he said gently, "I think your mommy is looking for you right now, too." Bella nodded. "Then maybe we'll find each other in the middle," she said with a little smile that melted him completely. They kept moving. Every corner they turned brought new faces. Every passing second added to the tension. Kelvin found himself asking store clerks, describing Bella's mother as best as he could. "She's wearing a pink scarf," he repeated over and over. "Her daughter's 5 years old." Each time someone shook their head, disappointment flickered in Bella's eyes, and Kelvin's heart sank deeper. He looked down at her again. "You doing okay, sweetheart?" Bella tried to smile. "I'm brave," she whispered. "Mommy says brave girls don't cry." Kelvin swallowed hard. He saw her lip tremble, but she held it in. That kind of courage in such a tiny person. It broke something inside him and healed something at the same time. "Hey," he said softly, "you can cry if you want. Even brave girls need to sometimes." Bella looked up at him, her lashes wet with unshed tears. "Will you still help me if I cry?" Kelvin nodded instantly. "Always." And just like that, she let one small tear roll down her cheek. He gently wiped it away with his thumb, his heart twisting. He had never felt so protective, so determined. Then suddenly Bella gasped. "That's her!" she cried out, pointing ahead. Kelvin turned sharply. Through the moving crowd, a young woman appeared, her brown hair loose, a pink scarf around her neck, her face pale with fear. She was looking everywhere, calling, "Bella! Bella!" Bella's eyes lit up like fireworks. "Mommy!" she shouted and ran forward on her little legs, the crowd parting as she dashed into her mother's arms. Kelvin stood frozen for a moment, watching as the woman dropped her bags and hugged her daughter tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. The reunion was so raw, so full of love, that it made Kelvin's eyes sting. The woman kissed Bella's hair again and again. "Oh, my sweet girl, I was so scared." Bella smiled through her tears. "Don't cry, Mommy. He helped me. He made the machine happy." Her mother looked up, her eyes meeting Kelvin's. For a second, she looked stunned. This tall, handsome man in a sky-blue suit looked completely out of place among the toy shops and food stalls, but the kindness in his eyes told her everything. "Thank you, sir," she said, her voice trembling. "You don't know what this means to me." Kelvin shook his head. "She's a brave little girl," he said softly. "She didn't give up, even when she was scared." The woman smiled, hugging Bella close. "That's my Bella," she whispered. Kelvin's gaze lingered on the pair, mother and daughter holding each other like the world had stopped spinning. For a man who had spent his whole life surrounded by wealth, this simple moment felt richer than anything money could buy. As Bella turned to wave at him, her small hand trembling with joy, Kelvin realized something powerful. Sometimes the most meaningful moments don't come from the boardroom or a luxury car. They come from helping someone find their way back to love. And deep down, he knew this wasn't the end of their story. It was only the beginning of something he didn't even know his heart needed. For a few moments, Kelvin couldn't move. He just stood there, watching the reunion between the little girl and her mother. It was a picture of love, pure, unfiltered, and powerful enough to silence everything around him. The mall noise faded. All he could see was Bella's small arms wrapped tightly around her mother's neck. He had seen countless emotions in his lifetime: greed, anger, pride, but this one was different. This was love in its simplest, truest form, and it pierced straight through the walls around his heart. Bella's mother, still kneeling with tears in her eyes, looked up at Kelvin again. "I can't thank you enough," she said softly. "You don't know what could have happened. I just turned for one moment and she was gone." Kelvin shook his head. "She's a smart little girl," he replied, smiling faintly. "She knew how to wait, and she believed in magic." The mother blinked. "Magic?" Bella beamed proudly and held up the half-eaten chocolate bar. "He helped the machine feel happy," she said, giggling. "Then we found you." Her mother chuckled softly, brushing her daughter's hair. "You really did make her day," she said to Kelvin with a grateful smile. Kelvin smiled back, but inside, something deeper stirred. He wasn't used to this kind of gratitude, not the polite kind from business partners, not the empty thank yous from clients. This was real, genuine. "Your daughter has a big heart," Kelvin said quietly. "She reminded me that kindness still exists." Bella reached into her tiny pocket and pulled out the folded chocolate wrapper. "I'm keeping this forever," she said proudly. "It's my lucky wrapper." Kelvin chuckled. "It's lucky because it gave you chocolate?" Bella shook her head. "No, because it gave me a new friend." That single line hit him harder than any business deal ever could. A new friend. He, a man surrounded by hundreds of employees and acquaintances, suddenly realized he had no real friends. Not one person who looked at him with pure kindness like this little girl did. He crouched down beside her again, looking into those innocent blue eyes. "You made me smile today, Bella," he said softly. Bella's eyes sparkled. "Then it's a good day, mister." Her mother smiled gently, adjusting the scarf around her neck. "We should go now, Bella. We have to get home." Bella turned to Kelvin and whispered, "Will I see you again?" Kelvin froze for a second. No one had ever asked him that before with such innocent hope. He swallowed hard and nodded. "I hope so." Bella smiled and wrapped her tiny arms around his neck, hugging him tightly. For a man who hadn't been hugged in years, the warmth of that small embrace melted every frozen corner of his heart. When she stepped back, he realized he was smiling wider than he had in years, a real, unguarded smile. Her mother watched the scene quietly, her heart softening. "You must be a father," she said softly. Kelvin shook his head slowly. "No. But today, I think I understood what it means to care like one." The mother smiled, her eyes full of quiet admiration. "Then I'm glad fate let us meet." He nodded gently. "So am I." As they started to walk away, Bella turned one last time and waved. "Don't forget to smile, mister," she called out. Kelvin raised a hand, his voice barely steady. "I won't." And then they disappeared into the crowd, leaving him standing alone once again. But this time, it didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like peace. He glanced down at the floor where a small coin glimmered beside the vending machine, maybe one Bella had dropped earlier. He picked it up, holding it in his hand for a moment, and whispered, "Maybe something did fall out after all." He looked around the mall, now filled with familiar noise again, laughter, chatter, footsteps, but everything felt different. The colors seemed brighter, the air lighter. It was as if the world had shifted, just slightly, into something softer. For years, Kelvin's heart had been silent, buried under success, wealth, and solitude. But now it beat with something he hadn't felt in decades: life. That day, in a crowded mall filled with strangers, a little girl named Bella had awakened a part of him he thought was gone forever. And for the first time in years, Kelvin Brooks walked out of that mall not as a lonely millionaire, but as a man who had finally learned to feel again. Before leaving, Bella looked up at him with her innocent blue eyes. "Will I see you again, mister?" Kelvin crouched down and smiled. "I hope so, Bella." She handed him the empty chocolate wrapper and said, "Keep this. It'll remind you to smile." Kelvin held the small wrapper carefully, feeling tears sting his eyes. "Thank you, sweetheart." As she waved goodbye, walking away with her mother, Kelvin stood still, watching the crowd swallow them. For the first time in his adult life, his heart wasn't empty. He looked down at the wrapper again and whispered, "Maybe something did fall out today. Not from the machine, but from my heart." From that day on, Kelvin started a quiet project: vending machines in every poor neighborhood that gave free snacks to children who couldn't afford them. On every machine, he had a small message engraved. Maybe something will fall out. Kindness always does. And somewhere, Bella's words lived on in his heart, teaching him and the world that sometimes the smallest hands can awaken the biggest hearts. Heartwarming lesson. This story reminds us that compassion can come from the smallest souls. In a world full of wealth, technology, and rush, sometimes what people need most is a little kindness, a small act that proves humanity is still alive.